I'd like to call the Steamship Authority IT Executive Steering Committee meeting in progress. It is January 15th, 2026 at 1 p.m. Members of the IT Executive Steering Committee who are present are myself, Peter Jeffrey, the chair, Rob Rain from Nantucket, and Gordon Carr from New Bedford. Welcome, Rob and Gordon. Thank you for joining. As we've expanded this committee as we move into the next phase of the implementation and rollout of the new reservation system. I need to start by reading an announcement about remote participation and recording. So first, I'd like to inform everyone that the Steamship Authority is making an audio and video recording of today's meeting. If anyone else is making an audio and video recording of today's meeting, please identify yourself by pressing the raise your hand icon on the Zoom dashboard, or if you're joining by phone, by pressing *9 on your keypad. When recognized, please state your name for the record. All right, I don't see anyone else. All right, next, statement concerning remote participation. Pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 as amended, all IT Executive Steering Committee members are participating, or some are participating remotely in today's meeting because their physical attendance today would be unreasonably difficult. All members are participating in the meeting by the Zoom video conferencing app and will be clearly audible to each other. As a result of the members' remote participation in this meeting, any and all votes taken by the committee today shall be by roll call. And if we could just start before we go into public comment, Mark Adamson, if you'd like to tell us who's in the room from the Steamship Authority.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Mark Emerson, the Chief Operating Officer and the sponsor for the IT project. And just like to introduce everyone in the room to my left. I'll let everyone just introduce their own name. But Stephen, you want to start?
Sure. Stephen Coleman, Director of IT.
Angela Campbell, Reservations and Customer Relations Manager.
James Kennefick, Director of HR.
Allison Fletcher, Director of Shoreside Operations.
Lizzie Freeman, Mama Gibbs team.
And Tom Ennis with Gibbs as part of the PMO.
Ranias Yabanis, part of the Gibbs team.
Mark Rosen, Treasurer Controller.
Alex Kriska, General Manager.
All right. And I've already introduced myself. I'm in the room now. So, I guess the next is, it's kind of been my custom since we started this committee. I'd like to open it up for public comment both at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. I'd ask that if you make a public comment at the beginning and it's in the form of a question, that we will try to answer that question as it goes through, as we go through our agenda and not at the start of the meeting. And then at the end of the meeting, I'll allow public comment again, primarily for comments on agenda items or questions as to agenda items that we've discussed. And if possible and practicable, we will answer those questions at the end of the meeting during public comment. So is there any public comment at this point? Raise your hand. I can't see if there's anything. All right, seeing no public comment, we'll move on. Item number 2 is approval of the minutes from September, October, and November. Since Rob and Gordon weren't on the committee then, and I was the only one on the committee, and John Hagill is not here today, I'm going to table the approval of minutes till the next meeting when John Cahill hopefully will be present. So at this point, I will turn it over to Mark for project update.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And Tom, want to start?
Sure. So so we thought it made sense to revisit the project timeline and the project team, given some of the questions that have come up in the recent both in discussions and also in the Port Council meeting. And so as a reminder, we're in the solution design phase. So we had extensive setup questions. We're done with the initial setup. and now working through solution design, which means that the project team is working on weekly basis, in some cases more than once a week, meeting with the IDEA team as they come back and respond to the requirements as have been identified. So the a lot of this is focused on where the IDEA had asked questions around configuration. They're now coming back with, okay, this is, did we hear you correctly? This is how we're responding to what you requested to set up. And then a lot of the solution design discussions right now are focused on some of the more custom elements specific to the Steamship Authority and making sure that those are interpreted into the system. And so a lot of this is covering the things like the wait list, where we're looking at, okay, how can the IDEA system handle it? How is that going to work operationally? How do we think that's going to work for stakeholders? And then doing an iterative process with them. As I mentioned in the past, there's thousands of decisions that need to be made as part of the system setup. And so we're discussing, what's the B2C, the business to customer experience, what does that look like? Also, what does the business to business experience look like, and how are we setting things up for shippers? How are we making sure that we're thinking through how's it going to work with the pre-season bulks process, et cetera. And so we're deep into those solution design discussions as IDEA works to both try to accommodate what we're looking for, but then also the Steamship is still learning about the system and learning how to leverage the functionality so that we continue to maintain the goal of as much as possible leveraging what the IDEA system brings to the table. As we're going through the solution design, we're now in an overlap period where they're starting to configure the system based on these things. So one of the nice, not to get too deep in the weeds, but one of the nice things about what IDEA is doing is they're not only trying to solve what we're working on collectively, but they're also updating kind of all the different layers of their system as we're going through this, so that for instance, if there's a change in what we're asking for in terms of a configuration of the B2B experience, they're also updating the API that will then feed that experience. So it's a comprehensive look. The other thing that we are about to kick off is, as planned, as part of the solution design phase, is defining the rest of the work plan in terms of dates. So the nailing down, okay, this is exactly how the system is going to work, and then working through the rest of the project plan and getting agreement on, okay, what are the dates for the R1, the R2 go live. So as you can see, the rest of this plan is this is still based on the initial plan that was agreed to in the summer, where we're going to go through, once we're done with solution design, finish the IDEA will work on the system configuration. Then there's going to be extensive work within the Steamship on testing. That's you can see the block R1 system acceptance. So that would be going in, testing the solution, making sure it's going to work, which then leads into training, and then a deployment, and then a phase go live. And part of the finalizing work plan is, as you can see on this slide, that we needed to line up with the fall, winter, and summer reservation schedule and when those go live dates are. So again, we're trying to implement this system in such a way that we take advantage of those inflection points between the seasons and position ourselves where we have to port over as few reservations as possible. So much more to come on this, but we're so far we're on track in terms of where we plan to be.
Rob or Gordon, do you have any questions at this point?
Okay.
No questions at this point, no.
Okay, so the next piece that we wanted to revisit was the project team. And this is an updated version of the project team. Previously, we had shared the sort of internal project structure. We've extended this to make it a bit more comprehensive now that we're into the implementation period. So going from left to right, we have the subcommittee, which is meeting today, and Mark Amundsen as the project sponsor, and then the PMO, and then we have an internal working group. This is meeting weekly to seek alignment internally, address priorities internally, prepare for stakeholder meetings, coordinate efforts with the external teams, etc. And then we have 4 sub-teams focused on the 2 on operations, focused on the public and the commercial experience, then a technical sub-team, and then accounting. And related to all of these teams are then a set of external teams that this is still I guess part of the procurement plan is nailing down exactly all the different external contributors to this, but the main contributors are the IDEA team as the reservation system vendor, InterSystems, who's part of the website precinct portal. They are also supporting some IT project management, and then Integrado, who is contributing with the financial system integration. So helping support the integration between the reservation system and the Steamship's accounting system. And then we also have Ship4, who is the payment processor. And then what's not reflected here would be the numerous different vendors who are supporting the network enhancement as we are updating the terminals, updating the different physical locations to be ready for the new reservation system.
I do have a question on this, primarily as it relates to our external teams. Do we have a single point of contact from a project management standpoint at the Steamship Authority to communicate, direct, and hold accountable each of our external teams in terms of their contract obligations to us, so that we don't get to a point where an external team is, changing the scope of their work. And it requires just where are the controls internally with how we communicate and hold our external teams account? And is it possible in the next iteration of the slide in the future to show who is that project manager internally for us acting as our technical representative to those external.
Yeah. So the answer is yes. Each of these vendors do have a point of contact on the steamship side. But we'll add that for the next meeting and clarify how that's being managed. The other piece to this is we now have project management meetings once a week with representatives, a single point of contact from each of the external teams, so that we're collaborating on a weekly basis of who's doing what are the barriers, where is there overlap, where are there dependencies, how are we making sure we're covering critical path items. And so the external teams have been helpful in also then joining those discussions.
And then, I know this is coming up later, but it just made me think, in terms of the procurement plan that the committee asked for, it would be helpful if that information then gets integrated into that procurement plan that we then present to the board through the committee. And then my second question, and then I'll see if Robin and Gordon have questions, is in terms of our internal sub-teams, do you have enough resources on those teams? And I ask in part, having just expanded the resources of my team, on this IT executive steering committee, to include Rob and Gordon.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
So there'll be in procurement for next, at the board meeting next week. I believe Steven's asking for some outside vendor help to augment his staff. We're gonna be, we've been using the Gibbs team on the CMO side, but also they've been helping backfilling in the operations team because they're so familiar with the reservation system and taking some of the, extra duties off Allison and Angela, like for the codifying, say the policies. And so we'll be coming to the board for that, as well as, helping outside. We have limited resources internally, so we're looking at outside resources to help us internally.
Okay. I see Gordon has a question. Okay.
Yeah, just real quick. Thanks, Peter. And it's along the lines of one of the questions you were asking. So, and this is just for because I don't know. So of InterSystems, Intergato, and Shift4, are any of those, I'll call them regular contractors to the Steamship Authority, or are they discreetly on this project only as a standalone?
So Integrato is the vendor we use to support our accounting system through rollout. We've used them. They also were the vendor that moved us from on-site to cloud. And they work on various projects, so they're very familiar with the accounting side and operations, so it's a seamless transition. Shift4, in the last roughly 12 months, bought out our previous credit card processor, so they're already on board using our credit cards now. So they're familiar with our operations. So they're on board. And InterSystems is a vendor, and Stephen can elaborate this, that we've been using for a while as far as internal services as on state contract. So all of these vendors in one shape or the other are exposed. They're doing work with the Steamship Authority in some capacity before.
Anyway, okay, good. That's sort of what I was trying to get at, right? They were pre-existing force multipliers, right? They're not just discreetly on this project, so that they know us and all of that kind of thing. Okay, good. Thank you.
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, so I mean, to your question, so there's a lot of effort underway to effectively, resource and backfill this effort, but it continues to be a risk. It's a risk that's a manageable risk, but it's going to, with projects like this, it is always going to be a struggle to have the folks that are most understanding of systems, are the A players that get things the most done on a day-to-day basis, are also the ones that you would rather they didn't do their day job at all and only did this project. But that's not possible, so the team will continue to manage some level of day-to-day responsibility and the project effort. Any other questions on this? All right, if not, on the next slide, just wanted to present the update on the overall project summary. So, as I mentioned before, in terms of looking on the left-hand side, the upper left, so we're finalizing customizations, working on the solution design, and then in parallel to that, there's been a tremendous amount of effort going into policy updates, revisiting the existing policies, revisiting how, as we mentioned in the past, how in some cases there were policies, and then there was an interpretation of policy in the old reservation system. And then in some cases, there were limitations to the old reservation system. So that actually informed them what the policy was operationally, just because it just as a constraint. And then now as we're looking at operational processes, as we're looking at the how things are handled at the terminals and revisiting things like how boats are being loaded, the new reservation system is an enormous opportunity to revisit those policies and codify things that codify, clarify policies going forward. So there's been a significant effort on the project team as we're working with IDEA to also be looking at the policies of the steamship, and that'll be the subject of some upcoming meetings we have, both town hall meetings and then also the upcoming board and port council meetings. We've also been working on a procurement plan. As we mentioned in the past, this effort is not just about the reservation system, it's about making sure all the other components of the steamship, the technical debt is being made up for where needed in order to enable the reservation system. And so there's a number of pieces that are having to be procured as part of that. And then so upcoming activities include continuing the solution design, sharing the draft policies with the board and port council, sharing the procurement plan with both of them. And then we're very excited to continue the series of town hall meetings. And we'll be, for those who haven't seen, because the press release went out for those, but we'll be sharing those at the end of this meeting, the upcoming dates. We continue to work through the major business decisions and managing the project risks, which include, as was mentioned before, the resource capacity, where there's unclear, undocumented policies, and then just as a reminder that change fatigue is real, it exists, and so this is a major change process, and so really trying to make sure that we're approaching this as a marathon as opposed to a sprint. In terms of the individual work streams, we still consider all but the reservation system green. The reservation system is still has a status of yellow, which means that we don't consider it behind, but there is some risk, and this is because we are still working with IDEA to nail down the system configuration. That until we all have clarity on that and have the final design and the work plan moving forward, still working through with them the things like the customizations. And so we're doing our best to make sure that we continue to stay on track. IDEA is also doing their best to make sure that this effort stays on track. And we're just trying to reflect that this is as it comes to the reservation system, this is a hard part of the project.
So can I just ask, what decisions does the steamship need to make or take what actions so that we can make final decisions as to solution designs and customs? I mean, is the piece we're waiting on what policies we're willing to adopt or change or revise? Is that part of it?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. So that's how we're planning to bring it to the board and the port council. So things like the so the wait list would be a good example of the wait list right now. The way the wait list works in the system is very open, has a lot of flexibility, but also leads to some operational inefficiency because you can purchase a ticket in September and wait list for a time in July, and so the IDEA system doesn't support that, and so working with them to what version of the waitlist do they support, and then also trying to look at how do we take this as an opportunity to just make it a more efficient booking process. So what we're planning to do then is to bring that change to the board as a policy change, as opposed to asking the board, how do you want to configure the system?
Tom, there's what, I think 2 customizations we're waiting on that and subscriptions, I think, that's it. And then one of the key takeaways of the initiatives of the project, as we've said through the budget process and the IT review, is making sure what's showing in the system is matching what's happening on the dock and what's showing to the customer making reservations. And one of the issues is identifying the contributors that leads to boats showing they're full and they have space. And so through policy, it's not just one item, there'll be policy changes to help alleviate those issues that are occurring.
Gordon, you have a question?
Just preparing myself for managing expectations. Tom, when we're talking about policies that need to be evaluated by the council and the board and decisions made and being brought to town hall, how many discrete policies are we going to need to tackle?
Well, there's now only one policy manual that you have to review, but there's a lot of policies in that. So we're trying to look at everything. Right now it's just shy of a 70-page document. So it's substantial, and this is going to lead to it's going to be a bit of a slog to get through this. It's been a bit of a slog internally to get through. What we have tried to do though is we're planning a discussion on Tuesday to go over these, and what we have done is break out. There's across all of the policy updates, there's a subset that we believe need review and an answer very quickly from the board and the port council. And then we also have another set that we think are really important for discussion that don't need an immediate decision, but ideally need a decision over the next, like, let's say 8 or 9 months. And so I'm not sure the exact number, but it's approximately a dozen policies that really need thorough review and discussion right now. And then another, another slightly longer list that we think are going to be critical to making sure that the system is configured correctly. But we also then are sharing with the board the comprehensive document that includes all of the edits and changes, because that was as we went into this, not surprisingly, there's some policies across the steamship were very well defined and codified, and then some still may have been practices that were followed but weren't necessarily codified, and so trying to put that all together into a single document.
Yeah, just like to add is, or everyone doesn't get scared off, we're not, the 61-page policy book is a culmination of mostly existing policies, getting it in one document with some additions of proposed, and like to add, these are proposed policy changes. And this is what we want to get discussed, in our meeting coming up, post board meeting, the workshop next Tuesday. So please we don't have 60, 70 pages of new policies coming out. These are just existing with changes. Some of the changes policy changes are very necessary to fit into the IDEA software platforms that we can't do with the existing, we can do with the existing legacy platform. We can't bring into the IDEA platform as well. So those will be going out this afternoon to all the board and board council members.
And if I may follow up, and some of these are the 70 pages to make you feel better, are just clarification, like what is the length restriction that we have? What is a height restriction at the terminal? What are definitions? So not all 70 pages are policies. Some of these are already known. It's just like Mark said, consolidating in one place.
And Gordon, Rob, I'll add that I've discussed this with Mark as well as just Alex this week as he comes on board, that when we're talking about this level of decision making from the port council and the board, this can't be a policy presented on Thursday with the staff recommendation that we vote at the following Tuesday meeting. We're always going to have at least 2 meetings, or in this case, we're going to have our workshop where we'll get the information presented, where we can have a dialogue, ask questions. Then there'll be the series of town hall meetings so that we can then get the public feedback and then have the board and port council and this committee distill that. My hope is that we'll be able to come up with a recommendation to the port council and the board from this committee. And seeing that, both chair of the port council and the chair of the board now are members of this committee, I think we're going to have a good amount of vetting. So there's going to be at least 2 full meetings worth of discussion before we come to a vote, and at least a month of time for public comment and input to board and port council members.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was just trying to see whether next Tuesday was going to be a sleepover or not, right? So that's really helpful to sort of get ourselves squared away. So Mark, you'll send those out to us in advance, it sounds like. That's great. Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so I'm not going to go into detail on the other work streams unless there's any particular questions, but just we're moving forward with the operations redesign, policies, procurement, plan for the website launch, the pre-season portal that's part of the shippers process, the working on the payment gateway, which relates to the Ship 4, the business central integration for the accounting system, and then internal and external infrastructure, hardware and updating. And then, also looking at, there's also been some initial discussions we're working on in terms of, how can we leverage the data mart? How are we gonna deal with legacy data? And how are we gonna deal with migration of data?
And, I mean, that brings up good points, is that on the data migration and the legacy data, we may be asking for policy changes for, say, the month of November, December. Do we, have one-way tickets booked in December in one system and the return in the other, so we're not carrying data over, for example, which might make, a lot more sense. It gives people experience of using the old system and the new system. So for instance, in December, maybe excursion tickets for the month of December are one ways. And then the month of January, the return part are one ways.
That would be sort of a temporary policy change though, Mark. That's just for the transition purposes, right?
Yeah, for that 1 month, for example, just how to handle it, so it makes it easier for everyone. How do I get my reservation from one system to the other?
Yeah.
So it might be a temporary solution, knowing some of these challenges we have coming, both from a system and implementation side, but also from a customer side.
So it sounds, Gordon, that it may not be a sleepover Tuesday during a workshop, but definitely bring snacks for your coffee.
Noted.
I don't know if either of you have any more questions, I just want to be mindful of our time and my commitment to try to keep these meetings to 1 hour.
Yeah, so at this point, I think we've covered everything, so I'm gonna turn it over to Mark as we walk through the budget and the procurement plan.
Okay, so on the first slide here, we have the, we go to the procurement side first. This is not the same order I have, sorry about that. So we have the infrastructure and the hardware for the procurement plan. So in the top items, we can see there's really network related equipment, to supporting the equipment from the firewall down. A PDU is a power display for the, looks like a UPS for your PCs here. And you have network equipment, how it's gonna be funded. All these are capital projects. If we're going to be having grant reimbursements, we've met with MassDOT in September about these projects here. Talk about them, and then how we're gonna procure it and when we need to procure it by. So that's the infrastructure we need as far as IT infrastructure, not cabling stuff that we need to go for this, have in place for this project.
Do we have any estimates of what the costs may be?
We'll have it on the budget side.
Okay,
Okay.
is there a way, for the next meeting to integrate it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And some of these are still work in progress, as Tom said, and we'll have nailed down better as part, especially with the integration pieces, is until you knew exactly what a DIA system was doing, you weren't sure what the back end you were receiving was.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so on the next slide, we have the cable and electrical. This is like physical implementations that we have. We need a strong network to pull this off because it is a cloud-based system. So we have Cat6 cabling, we have multi-fiber networking cabling, then we have the place to store it, documentation of the certification of the cabling. So if we have to redo it again, we have plans, which will help going forward. And then the conduits and structure for the pathways. So some of these are capital and some of these are improvements that'll be in the operating budget.
And if I can make another suggestion in the future,
Mhm.
once we nail down this procurement plan, or if it is nailed down now, just for communicating it to the public, it would be helpful if we could then demonstrate it, through a pie graph, how much of this overall is capital
Mhm.
budget versus operating budget, because I know there's a great amount of confusion in the public about what, where those sources are and what makes it, because if you read, then you say, oh, look at all this, and you think it's coming from operating, you're thinking we're gonna make it from the fare box section.
Mm-hmm. If we can do that, and that what we'll do is eventually, to your point, I'll merge the procurement plan and the budget together.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll have all the information, and then we'll give a status of what's the spend on the project as well.
And that would be a good data point, I think, for this committee every time we meet.
Yep.
Moving forward.
So on the next slide, we're talking about the application integrations. Whether it's the idea booking model, integrating the new website with the white page label. We're gonna have to have the current website running for a little bit, so that we can get retrieve your old information. We have travel alerts, we have integration with the accounting system, so we can automate some of these processes. And then we have data migration. So these are the application integrations that are gonna either pull or push information with the idea system. On the next slide. We have the professional services, so part of the Wi-Fi, we have the network assessments, but we need to have a strong network, both Wi-Fi and hard-coded, hardwired network. We have cabling, electrical, we have UAT and quality assurance, and then we have the documentation, training, and the knowledge, the transfer of our knowledge during this process as well. So those are the high-level, professional services we're gonna need, and where they stand in the procurement plan. Or some of these would be operating capital, depending on which project they're working with.
I think it's helpful that many of these can be done through state contract.
Yes.
Jordan, Rob, do you have any questions on the procurement plan?
So then on the budget slide. So the idea reservation system, we've already procured that. And we put up bid, so of that, 3.3 million is going to be operating. We're going through the GASB 97 review, but it looks like 3.3 million of that 5.8 million is gonna be in the operating budget over time, and 2.5 will be through the implementation costs. We have estimates on the system integrations that we're finalizing now. And I was remiss, I should have said we have the item cost, what we're estimating now, and the total cost per category. And then on the right was with the estimates that we had before, not knowing who the vendor was. And so some of these numbers, like for instance, the accounting system integration, originally looking at 800,000, not knowing how the data was gonna be passed, it's only gonna be roughly around $100,000. We already have the infrastructure in place to take it, and the data is coming on very usable sources. So you're gonna see some variations on these estimates. We mentioned the IT staff support and augmentation that'll be coming for a recommendation next week. We have hardware, we have scanners, handheld and fixed, we have network equipment, and then we have computers and printers. And the computers and printers, to put in context, is we have an annual inventory that we rotate and manage through our PCs. And so that's the whole number, is not just for this project, but we would have incurred some of those costs anyways. So on the next slide, we have third-party software. So one of the things we do is we pull in, for example, the vehicle database. So when you say I have a Ford Explorer 2002, it tells you what the dimensions are. We're gonna have a hazardous material compatibility software to make sure that the stuff on the boats are matching, and other third-party software. So that's a cost over 5 years, and that'll be in the operating budget. Project management. So we have the IT project management, where Stephen will be asking for approval on that. So to your point about the intrasystems, who's managing it, we're gonna have project managers on the IT, making sure each one of these IT projects are going accordingly for the integrations.
Just so you know, that's an estimated number, it's not.
Yeah,
Just saying, if you got the last slide showing.
Okay, so that's an estimate. The DIA system project manager, that was awarded by the board already. We have the change management and support. Some of that's already in the operating budget from 2025 and 2026. I expect that number to grow based on what we've seen in the last 3 or 4 months, and the amount of additional workload and competing resources for that, whether it's in the change management, staff augmentation, or internal resources, that I expect that number on the labor side to grow a little bit from the original budget estimate to keep this project on time. We mentioned the training, and that was in the operating budget. And then we have the total preliminary estimate through 2030 of about 9.8 million. The original estimate was about 19 million for this project. And then we have additional infrastructure upgrades I want to mention. This is stuff we would have done anyways with updating our UPSs, internal wiring in the buildings. It's related but not related, so I just wanted for transparency to mention that in there. So that's what we're looking for spend over the next 5 years, and I will break down for the next meeting, the capital, when you expect it to cost to be incurred versus the operating per year.
Gordon or Rob, any questions?
No, you were clearly pretty conservative, or on your original estimates. You don't really see this very often where it's coming in as low as it is, which is a happiness problem, right? That's good. But and I'm assuming on the slide that we're looking at now, Mark, there were no preliminary estimates on this because this was all just follow on from the work underway, right?
Yeah, so the estimate, that was done, the Givers team working with Stephen and, the former COO, I believe, with the estimates, and you really didn't know what, until you picked the vendor, what you were receiving, what equipment you're gonna use, what you had to do. And that's part of the reason why with the 2025 budget was really on hold, because that number at 20 million is a very big number. And so not knowing what other projects we impacted, now that we have concrete numbers that we'll be working with Alex and developing the capital budget, incorporating this in other projects as well.
Okay. Thanks.
All right.
That's all I have.
Great. So moving on then, we've already talked about this, just the timeline in terms of, again, we're trying to align the policy revision with the ADIA timeline. And so the next piece to this is going to be the, as was mentioned, a working session on Tuesday to go through the policy changes, policy recommendations, and also go through some of the principles, some of the reasoning behind it. What are some of the factors that have gone into the project team recommending a particular policy direction. What we're hoping is that that discussion on Tuesday just leads to, if nothing else, some really good questions, and areas where we want to get additional public feedback, and then we have scheduled between the meeting on the board meeting on the 20th and the February core council meeting, we have scheduled the next set of town hall meetings. So to jump to that, we similar to how we had done these the last time. So we had kicked off really a meeting series, and this is now the next step in that series. And don't worry, there'll be more. So we're planning to have these at least quarterly. Having meetings in person on the vineyard in Nantucket, and then also on the mainland. And this time around, we are planning to, I guess, sort of like, what's the word for it? Do on the same day, shipper meetings and then the town hall meetings. So we're having shipper meetings similarly on the vineyard, on Nantucket, on the mainland, because we have a number of policy changes, operational recommendations, system changes, system implications that are specific to the shipper community. And so the plan is to meet with them, have a little break, and then meet with the community. We really appreciated the robust discussions that happened in the last set of meetings. There's a lot of interest. We will be, in addition to the public postings, we will be sending out to all those who had asked to sign up to be beta testers. We're not ready to kick off the beta tester meetings, but we're going to directly invite everybody to these discussions in case they want to come. We're really looking for these to be, an exchange, a discussion as we, making sure that, you know, as we're thinking through the different policy changes, that we have an understanding of, you know, what's the impact, what are the things that we should be considering as we're making these decisions. And so, on the 22nd, we're going to be having meeting on the vineyard, the shipper meeting 3 to 5, and then a town hall meeting 5:30 to 7:30. This will be in the Tisbury Emergency Services Building. In that, if you're familiar, in the room downstairs. We thought it was a great space the last time. It's a good place to have a meeting. For the mainland discussions, we'll be doing those at the Steamship Authority offices here in Palmer. And again, so this will be next Friday, the 23rd. With the shipper meeting, we're gonna have it in the morning, 9:30 to 11:30. So we're hoping that time works for folks. And then having a town hall meeting planned for noon to 2 p.m. The mainland meeting will have a virtual option, so folks can call in. We thought it was really productive with the Vineyard in Nantucket to have those as just in-person meetings. But then for the mainland meeting, to allow people to call into that. So hopefully that time will work for folks to have it, midday. The lunch with the Steamship Authority and the reservation system.
Virtual lunch.
Yeah, virtual lunch. Bring your own virtual lunch. And then we'll admit Nantucket is busier this time of year than we expected. And so it was actually surprisingly difficult to find a meeting space, a meeting time, a meeting location. Sorry, but we were able to work out, we're gonna have the meeting on Tuesday, January 27th. Again, similar to the Vineyard, a 3 to 5 discussion with shippers, and then a town hall meeting, 5:30 to 7:30. This will be at a new location for this project, which the Nantucket Dreamland Theater has been kind enough to coordinate with us to host this meeting. And so this will be at the Dreamland Theater. And so similar to last time, this press release has gone out. We're going to, and this will be posted, and we're working with the Steamship communications team to get this out to folks so they have awareness of the meetings.
Gordon?
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, a couple of comments or questions. So I certainly get the fact that the island meetings you want to have in person, and that the virtual option might, put downward pressure on the people that actually will attend. Those of us that can't get over there for that. The discussions in these town hall meetings are going to be really important for those of us that are going to be making these policy decisions on a pretty tight time frame, right? So if there's no virtual option, it's my hope, and Tuesday the 27th is 1 week before the Port Council meeting. So they're not recorded, but as much detail as staff can get to us in advance on what those comments were and all that kind of stuff is going to be really helpful, right? I'll try to attend the mainland one if I'm able, for at least one or the other. So I get that, but it will be really important for us to understand what those conversations were. So, and then thing two, and this may be a new guy thing, right? But is there value in encouraging the folks that might participate in the town hall session, if they are able time-wise, to also participate in the shipper session, in the sense that there may be conversations in those shipper meetings about freight movements that are really important and complicated, but subtle enough that residents may not be as familiar with, right? It could be really informative for them on the complexity on the freight side, right? That they may not all be particularly familiar with. Do you know what I mean? So I get that the topics should be discrete, shipper and then town hall, but some commingle or overlap of participation or attendance could be helpful. That's that's from the New Bedford guy though. So, it's just a
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, these are open meetings. And so if folks want to attend the shippers meeting and have an understanding of the shippers' needs, some of the policies that more directly affect the shippers, also some of the changes that we're proposing as part of the reservation system that are going to more directly impact shippers and their timeline, things like things like changing tickets, cancellations, how they're what they're going to be able to do in the new system. If folks want to join, they are welcome to.
Yeah, we've had shippers at the open town halls too.
Yeah, and we understand, these are not necessarily, while we're holding two separate meetings for the two topics, we also recognize that these are not necessarily mutually exclusive groups, that there's lots of shippers who, the reason why they are shippers is because they are residents of the island, and so they travel both as shippers commercially and as residents. And then there's one of the things that we're trying to do as part of this system is also just be able to track more accurately in the system all of the folks who today travel as public customers, but actually are traveling as a business, but they're not identified as a business in our current system. And so there's a lot of bridging between the two, and so yes, it's a great point. We're still trying to take the sort of, come one, come all. When folks want to give their feedback as part of this process, we'd love to hear it.
Any other questions, comments from committee? All right, before we move on to public comment, is there any new business?
Yes, I'd like to add that I got an email from Mr. Cahill, one of our members, and he is requesting a thorough budget review for our next meeting. And also, where do we stand now and our scheduled expenses between now and launch? The second question he asked was requesting to give us create a Gantt chart by our next meeting showing activities, timeline, and dependencies. So anyway, that was his request.
Anyone else with new business, including agenda items you'd like to see next meeting? All right. Thank you, Rob and Gordon, for joining this committee. Hope you don't regret it after today's meeting, but I did keep it outside of public comment. Now, I have kept it to 1 hour. That's kind of my commitment to this committee. So at this point, we'll take public comment. As we open it up for public comment, I would just say that if you have a question and it relates to one of the agenda items we spoke about, of course, we will attempt to answer your question if possible. If it's outside the agenda of the committee, we probably will punt it to the next meeting or an offline response. But if it's to the agenda that we just discussed, we'll attempt to answer it. So with that, Mary, see your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. Mary Musakia from Woods Hole. First to Mr. Kriska, welcome to the community, and I hope you have a great time living in our area. It is a wonderful place. I had a comment and a request and a question. And so my comment was really that I was surprised at the variation on the budget where for the reservation system, where there is a variation between, I think, something like 19.1 million and down to 10 million. Congratulations for the reduction, as Mr. Carr noted, but I would hope in the future that we would be able to do a better job, or the staff would be able to do a better job and not have that type of a variation. In the commercial world, that would not be very acceptable to have a budget that, have those types of variations. It's almost a 2x difference. My request was that for these town hall meetings that you could put up on the website the policies so that people, as they're coming to make their comments, would have had a chance, just as all of you have requested, to review them in advance. It'll make it a more meaningful, opportunity to give good insight. And then my question was on one of the slides, if I read it right or caught it correctly, for the system architecture, that's going to come about in Q4 of 26. And if I'm reading that right, if that was the case, I'm sort of surprised because I would have thought the system architecture would have needed to be one of the first things that is done in redoing the reservation system. So I may not have caught it correctly, but it was on one of the slides, right before the procurement plan, I believe, or maybe it was on the slide for the procurement plan. So that was, let's see, where did it say? Oops, can't read that fast. It was talking about, it may have been one before that, but it was specifically talking about the system architecture. And it indicated that it was going to be in Q4 of 26. And there it is, about the fourth or fifth line, system architecture, capital, state contract, procure by the date of October of 26 through 27, which is basically Q4. And I would have thought systems architecture had to be done earlier, but that may be my ignorance on how software is designed. So that was my question, is it seems late in the game.
Yeah, so Mary, this is Stephen Coleman, the IT director. That's a good catch on your part. Looking closely at this chart, systems, the next line being network, the line after that being applications integration, and even quality assurance. I can assure you all this is being addressed presently, and I think the intent was to indicate that it's already started and will go for the foreseeable future, near term end of the project.
So as you get forward with the board and you're working on this, you anticipate system architecture will move to an earlier date because you're showing the state procurement date as being in the fall of 26.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll adjust those dates.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
And Mary, as a follow-up to your request, to get the policy updates, recommendations in advance of the town halls, that'll occur just by virtue of the workshop that the board and court council are going to Tuesday, because it'll be part of the meeting packet that'll be made public on the website, as well as you can tune into the workshop if you want, or as Gordon's calling it, the sleepover.
All right. Thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, seeing no other public comment, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded, roll call vote.
Aye.
Manny, aye.
Gordon? Jeffrey, aye. We are adjourned at 63 minutes of meeting time. So my apologies for the 3 hours.
Close enough for government work, Peter. It's fine. See you next Tuesday.
All right, see you Tuesday. Thank you, everyone.